Moving on to the image tab, we're skipping this tab for the moment. This is how big the cloner is. By default it'll choose whatever your composition is set for, but of course you can change it. But be aware that these numbers are based on the cloner's size, so if I make that 1 and then adjust the cloner size, you see what happened. Settings tab, ignore the masks, they don't work properly. Motion blur is of course what you'd expect and the usual things you get in any Fusion tool. Now we'll move on to this tab, which is the Effectors tab. Effectors are images that affect the behavior of each clone. To demonstrate this, I'll just create a background, put it in the left viewer, make it white, add a rectangle mask and just soften the edge. In Cloner, I will increase the number of clones so it's more obvious what it's doing. And then to make this background image an effector, you again right click over the cloner and choose whichever effector you want it to be. In this case I'll use the position effector. Then come into the Effectors tab, say use position effector, and now this is determining what effect the effector is having on the clones. So if I move this background about, you can see the effect it is having on the position of each of the clones. And of course this can be animated. To illustrate that, I'll grab a fast noise, increase the contrast, see the rate, so actually increase the see the rate even more, so you can see that the fast noise is animated. Again, right click, hover over, let go, position effector, and if we hit play, you can see that the clones are reacting their position to the animated effector. X and Y position, of course, can be controlled completely independently. By default, they use the Luma channel of the effector, but this, of course, can be changed. If I do this, currently nothing will happen much because the image is black and white. If I go to the fast noise and make one color red and the other color blue, depending which channels I select, we get different effects. The next option, which is use position midpoint, this affects the way the position is changed. To demonstrate this, I'm going to switch this to a linear, increase the number of clones, make it slightly longer. Go to the Effectors tab. I'm just going to affect the Y position. Just to see what it's doing. I'm going to put this back to how it was. If I hit play, you can see each clone starts in the center and then is going up and down, but never going below the center. If I then use position midpoint, anything that is above middle gray is a positive effect. Anything below middle gray is a negative effect, as you can see here. So when it's white, it goes up. When it's black, it goes down. And in between, in the sort of middle gray, it does nothing. And of course, this affects every mode. And of course, all the other effects still work. to linear again. And again, to demonstrate what this is doing, if I turn off use position midpoint, the clones are just going up, whereas in this case they're going up and down. So you can control which direction the clones move based on the level. In this case it's luma, but it could be a middle red, a mid green, a mid blue. To show the position effector a bit more, I'm going to take the background I created, remove the mask, switch it to gradient, mode to ping pong, and this allows me to move the gradient. And to animate it, I'm just going to add a small expression, which is going to change the offset over time. So as you see now, we have the gradient moving, but it is not affecting this at the moment because currently it's the fast noise, it is the position effector. But again, right click, hover over position effector, and you can see the effect of the position effector on this series of clones. And of course, if I change the type to, for example, radial, you can see the effect. Think of effectors as a way of procedurally animating whatever it is you're cloning. If I change this back to linear for a moment, turn off use position midpoint, ignore that jump, that's just because the composition is looping. Turn that off. If I then take the background and go to the white and then fade that down, I've faded the effect of the effector, if you see what I mean. So that is another way of controlling whatever it is you're animating with your effectors. And of course, effector images can be anything. This could be a piece of video, or you can blend together things in Fusion. We have our animated noise. If we merge that on top, look at that, change the mode to, for example, difference. That is having a different effect than just the background on its own. So that's the position effector. I'm just going to disconnect the image for the moment. I don't have to. I can just, if I undo that, I can stop the effector by just turning off that option, and now that's no longer affecting position. I'm going to take the background and again right click, this time scale effector, turn on the scale effector, and to make it look nice I'm going to add an expression. I'm just going to pick whip that. So this means that the X and Y scales are linked. If I then increase that, you can see the effect the effector is having on the scale. And again, you've got the channels if you wish to use different channels to control X and Y scale. And the scale midpoint does a similar thing where heading towards black is a negative, heading towards white is a positive. And if I turn off scale midpoint for a moment, make the scale -1, the effect of white is to scale this to nothing. So that's the scale effector. Again, I'm going to turn it off for a moment. The next effector we're going to look at is the rotation effector. Now obviously, rotating a circle, you wouldn't see anything. So I'm going to remove the ellipse mask, so just have a square. And again, to make it slightly more obvious, I'm going to make the width half of the height. Again, I'm going to right click, rotation effector, turn on the use rotation effector. Again, we're using the Luma channel in default, although you can use any channel. And give it some rotation. And you can see the effect it is having. And again, there's a rotation midpoint, which does the same thing, the negative towards black, positive towards white, mid-grade as little. And of course, as I was before, it is affecting everything. To demonstrate what this effector axis is doing, which affects everything, but is more obvious what it's doing when you're playing around with scale and rotation. Because by default, the axis for the scale and the rotation is in the center at 0.5, 0.5. But this can be changed. So if I make that 0, you've seen it now that the clone is scaling from the bottom and rotating around the bottom. And you can even move the effector axis outside of the clone itself. If I turn on position effector, you will notice that it has shifted the position based on that axis. And if I just switch this to spherical grid, you can see what it is doing.